So, you want to be a warlock? Well then, let's not waste any time. The warlock is possibly one of the best classes in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and the Unearthed Arcanas that made the cut into the Xanathar's Guide to Everything have been very kind to this class, and personally, this is one of my favorite classes in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Okay, now that that's out of the way, why is Warlock so good? Well, for starters, it's actually a utility caster. Despite that, it's a utility caster that deals the most damage out of the other utility casters, like Bard and Ranger, for example. What makes the Warlock so unique is that it's one of the more complex classes to play, similar in a way to that of the Paladin and Cleric, whereas the Cleric and Paladin have a lot of active abilities and features and such. In contrast, the Warlock has a lot of passive abilities, mostly in part to their unique class feature, Eldritch Invocations, which is really the bread and butter of this class in all honesty. Okay, well, what stats are the best? Well, much like the Sorcerer and Bard, your main stat is Charisma, plain and simple. However, your next best stats are, well, Constitution or Dexterity, depending on what you want to do. Personally, I put more focus on Constitution, because more health is always good. Warlock doesn't need to go first, unlike Rogues and certain melee. However, after that, it's followed by Wisdom, Intelligence, and Wisdom. Intelligence and Strength are not very useful for a Warlock, which is why generally, as a Warlock, I tend to take a dump into Intelligence. Even as a Sorcerer, I tend to take a dump into Intelligence. No reason about why, but the Chandra Ray Warlock build that I personally use, and again, using Human Variant here for the Warcaster feat right here, you're going to want to put your 15 into Charisma as a Human Variant, so you get the 16, so you get a plus 3. After that, you're going to put the 14 into Constitution, and then take the 13 and use your Human Variant plus 1 to get it up to 14. After that, dump Intelligence, 12 to Wisdom, and 10 to Strength. Alright, so now that we got that out of the way, what are the best spells for Warlock? Well, that is kind of a tricky question, considering Warlock is very limited in his spells, and I'll show you why. See that here? That's how many, like, our spell slots work very differently from every other caster. Because of that, we're not a full caster, we're not a half caster, or a third caster, like Eldritch Knight, for example. We're kind of this weird thing. We're kind of out in left field on our own, but that doesn't make us bad. Warlock has a lot of limitations for spells. Like at 5th level, you only have 3 cantrips, much like the Bard, but the Bard can steal cantrips, so it kind of makes it better for them. Warlock is, if you can't figure out from the spells, it's very utilitarian, but we only have 2 spell slots for the longest time until we get past 10th level. So, the highest amount of spell level a Warlock can learn is up to 5th level, but how their spell slots work is through Pact Magic. And let's say I cast Hellish Rebuke at 10th as a 10th level Warlock. Well, it's not going to be a 1st level Hellish Rebuke, it's not going to be a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th level, it's going to automatically be a 5th level spell. Which, granted, is a pretty nice way of getting around those limitations, but it's also kind of annoying at the same time, because you'd be doing that anyway as a caster. Overall, like, these spells here, like, just forget you have most of these, because you're really not going to be using them unless they're utility options, like Hold Person, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, or etc. You're mostly going to be using this spell here, Eldritch Blast, because a lot of invocations that we have work in conjunction and compound Eldritch Blast, like these 3 here. Frost Lance is through Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and it used to be a Fey Pact only invocation before the Unearthed Arcana was revised. Now any warlock can pick up Frost Lance, and usually one of the most broken combos that's resulted because of that is Repelling Blast, Frost Lance. Agonizing Blast is only really good once you get more beams. So like at 5th level, it starts becoming good because you have 2 beams. And by that logic, these also get even better because it's a 20-foot knockback and a 20-foot slow. Even better. But what makes Warlock special, even then you can see Max Rebuke here. But it's mainly the fact of, we do have options for cantrips. It's just most of them suck. Like these cantrips I have here, Minor Illusion and Mage Hand, you don't even need them. All you need is Eldritch Blast. it's the only spell you really need. Hell, Hex, you can get rid of Hex, because even then, like on average, Agonizing Blast and Eldritch Blast will deal more damage than if you had Hex. Hex just adds a little bit more, and that's all Hex really is there, is it takes up a bonus action and requires concentration. Which means its concentration you could be spending on Hold Person, and even then Hex isn't that good because it still costs a spell slot at the end of the day. So, if you really want to cheese the damage, Hex, but if you're fine just using Eldritch Blast and still dealing about the same damage anyway, just take Eldritch Blast. In fact, throw Fly or Dispel Magic or any other utility option that you have as a Warlock in your 3rd level. You're better off with those than not having them. In fact, you're better off not really using Hunger of Adar and just take Remove Curse. Or Fear, depending on what you need, but still. Alright, so how Eldritch Invocations work, again, at 3rd level you have 3 invocations, but every time you gain a level in the class, it allows you to gain another invocation that you can use. You can actually replace one of the invocations you know with that invocation. But you don't even need to do that because you can actually change out your invocations on a short rest. So, again, Warlock has a lot of versatility in just this feature alone. What is the best Pact Boon? Well, that's kind of a weird question. Personally, I prefer Pact of the Tome. However, I know a lot of people that prefer Pact of the Blade, and a lot of people that like Pact of the Chains. Despite Pact of the Chains being one of the weakest Pact Boons, it does have a good invocation in Xanathar's that allows you to actually receive maximum healing when your pet's nearby, at least within I believe 100 feet or something. So you get healed, it's the max roll because you're pet. So that's actually pretty good. But overall, Pact of Chains is generally terrible. So I prefer going Pact of the Tome. Mainly because it gives me some more spells, and that's always good. Even though there are 3 cantrips, it gives me 3 cantrips that are generally better than any spell that you could have as a Warlock, because it doesn't mean you're burning through your spell slots. So what I tend to go with for Pact of the Tome is Shocking Grasp, which is a Wizard and Sorcerer touch spell, which is very good for the Warlock as something gets on you, so you don't have to use your weapon. Next up, we have Shillelagh from the Druid. And basically, this is why you have a quarter staff as a tome lock, because of Shillelagh. And next up, we have options of Thorn Whip or Vicious Mockery. I personally would rather take Thorn Whip over Vicious Mockery, but that's just my personal opinion. So we're going to go with Thorn Whip, which also functions as a pole, so you don't have to take Grasp of Hadar. Really, another good invocation that you can pick up is called Kiss of Mephistopheles, which you can also take at 5th level. Its main requisites are, of course, being a 5th level Warlock, and having the Eldritch Blast cantrip, which you should have anyway. And it allows you, whenever the last beam of your Eldritch Blast hits, as a bonus action you can cast a Fireball centered on that last target hit. It still costs us Warlock spell slot, so it is a bit of a drawback. Okay. So, overall, what do we get at 5th level Warlock? Not a lot, but it's better than a lot of casters that I can think of offhand. So, your otherworldly patron, I'll let you guys decide that. They're all generally bad. You're never going to use their spell lists anyway. Their features are okay at best. Fiend Pact's the best because of the temporary hit points whenever you kill something. So, that part's good. But overall, it really depends on what you want to play, to be honest with you. Warlock, there is no bad patrons. The Archfey is technically the weakest of the patrons, but it really depends on what you want. So, let's say you went Pact of the Blade, you're better off having Hexblade as your patron, because it allows you to add your Charisma modifier to weapon damage, and it gives you proficiency with medium armor. And that's actually one of the few patrons and Warlock builds that you do not want to take Eldritch Blast on. But it makes you purely melee as a result. So, overall, what can we say about the Warlock? It's very, very good. But you also, you can't, just because Agonizing Blast allows you to add your Charisma modifier to the beam, you have to specify, when you're casting Eldritch Blast. So you're casting it with, I cast Eldritch Blast, Agonizing Blast, Repelling Blast, and Frost Lance. You have to specify when you're using your invocations, otherwise the DM can just say, no, you didn't specify it, so you're not casting those invocations, you're just casting the cantrip. And really that goes for a lot of classes, like really background and alignment, you can change that if you want. And even then, like this tab here, fill out as you wish. And even then, if you want to change the spells, go right ahead. And yeah, that's about all I have to say, really. Let me know if you have any other questions, and I'll be looking forward to making more videos. Next up, hopefully I want to get to the wizard. So, have fun, guys.